If there's an ant in your yogurt, it's usually not a welcome occurrence. But what if the ant were responsible for making the yogurt? Welcome to Microbial Minutes, the American Society for Microbiology's update on what's hot in the microbial sciences. I'm Madeline Barron, Science Communication Specialist at ASM. Before we dive into today's video, please take a moment to complete the survey linked in the description. It only takes a few minutes and helps us make better videos. We appreciate your support. So, ant yogurt. A traditional Turkish and Bulgarian yogurt making practice, ant yogurt is made by incubating Formica rufa ants, known as redwood ants, or ant eggs, larvae, pupae, or nesting material with milk. Scientists recently dove into this practice, exploring how and why it works through a host and microbial lens. But before we get there, I want to zoom out for a second to talk about fermentation, the process behind yogurt making in general. Fermented foods of various varieties have been ingrained in cultures around the world for thousands of years. Microbes, including yeasts and bacteria, drive fermentation, converting carbohydrates into alcohols and acids responsible for the characteristic tang associated with fermented foods. A vast array of foods is fermented, and dairy is high on the list. Researchers think people started fermenting dairy as early as 7,000 years ago based on analysis of prehistoric ceramics. Among fermented dairy products, yogurt is widely consumed today. Industrialized yogurt relies on a small number of bacterial taxa, with Lactobacillus delbrueckii subspecies bulgaricus and Streptococcus thermophilus being the most widely used. These bacteria work together. L. delbrueckii degrades casein, the main protein in milk, to release free amino acids and peptides. These then stimulate growth of S. thermophilus, which, via production of formic acid and carbon dioxide, stimulates the growth of L. delbrueckii. Lactic acid production by the bacteria makes the yogurt taste sour. While this is how industrial yogurt is produced, traditional yogurt, and fermented foods in general, are more varied in their production and microbiological composition. Understanding the microbial underpinnings of these practices could lead to uncovering diverse bacteria for fermentation applications. Now, with that in mind, ant yogurt offers some interesting insights. In a recent study, researchers sought to examine the process of ant yogurt production, diving specifically into the host and microbial processes behind it. The scientists conducted fieldwork in Bulgaria in a community that had retained an oral history of the practice. To make the yogurt, they added 4 live ants to a jar of warmed raw milk, placed a cheesecloth over the top, and left the jar to ferment within the ant colony overnight. The heat produced by the colony helped fermentation progress. After one day, the texture and flavor were aligned with yogurt fermentation. And the product could be used in different culinary applications, from an ice cream sandwich to a cocktail. Examinations of the microbiomes of 2 different redwood ant species revealed high abundances of lactic acid bacteria, as well as acetic acid and obligate intracellular bacteria, with variations depending on the season, that is, autumn or spring. From the yogurt, the researchers also isolated Fructolactobacillus sanfrancensis, a bacterium not only associated with ants but also sourdough bread fermentation. When the ants were added to the milk, their bacteria also entered the milk and proliferated. Whether or not the ants were living mattered, as the scientists found that dehydrated or frozen ants led to a high bacterial load of spore-forming bacillus bacteria, some of which can pose a health threat. And so it's not just about the bacteria or the ant that are important here. All of the components are needed to get the final product. And this represents a key example of the holobiont framework. To understand ant yogurt, we must look at the host and its associated microbes in the context of the environment that they share, an idea that has been broadly applied to host-microbe interactions. Now, mechanistically, there are a couple things going on. The researchers found that formic acid and lactic and acetic acid, which are key components of yogurt, were present in the ant yogurt. The levels of these acids varied depending on season, that is, spring versus autumn, coinciding with seasonal shifts in the ant microbiome. They also differed from conventional yogurt, with comparatively higher levels of formic acid and lower levels of lactic and acetic acid. Now, as their name suggests, Formica ants have a venom gland largely comprised of formic acid. The presence of formic acid in the ants may directly contribute to the production and taste of ant yogurt, as well as create conditions that favor acid-producing microbes that further influence fermentation. Moreover, proteases from the ant, some of which belong to the conventional yogurt microbes like L. delbrueckii and S. thermophilus, likely modulate yogurt texture, in part by degrading casein. This activity supports and interacts with the bacteria seeded by the ant, whose metabolic activity further modulates yogurt texture and flavor. So what does all this information about ant yogurt mean? Well, it's possible we could look to the bacterial diversity of ants and their metabolic functions for different fermentation applications. The researchers, for example, point to sourdough and plant-based yogurts. The findings also expand understanding of the ecological origins and assembly of ferment microbiomes, as well as provide a great example of the holobiont concept at play. There are also some anthropological considerations here. The study authors note that their findings challenge the ethos of conventional yogurt fermentation. They highlight that in contrast to industrial yogurt, with its limited bacterial strains, the bacteria in ant yogurt are maintained in the ants, yogurt, and environment, and are cultured through traditional dairy practices passed down over generations. As a result, preserving microbial diversity means upholding its cultural heritage. There are thus multiple lenses, not just a microbiology one, through which to understand how microbes are leveraged and impact our world. Now, before we wrap up, an important note. Don't try making ant yogurt at home. The study authors caution against the general population producing their own unless users are cultural practitioners or skilled food microbiologists. Formica ants carry a parasite that can have negative health impacts on humans, and while rare, severe infections can lead to liver abscesses and gastrointestinal distress. These also just aren't some random ants. They're Formica ants, and populations of Formica ants are declining, meaning a mass movement to make ant yogurt is not sustainable and does not align with conservation efforts. I'll also note that this study used raw milk, which has its own important health risks and considerations, as it can harbor a variety of disease-causing microbes like Campylobacter jejuni and Listeria monocytogenes. Raw milk is broadly understood to pose a public health risk. And so, ant yogurt is conceptually and microbiologically interesting, and offers a lens through which to explore host microbe-environmental interactions with practical implications. But, generally speaking, it's best to stick to antless yogurt varieties. That's all for today. If you liked this video, subscribe to ASM's YouTube channel for more Microbial Minutes. I'm Madeline Barron, and I want to thank you for listening. Thank Ray Ortega for production, and I'll talk to you next time.